She is a completely useless woman. Security must remove her. My stepmother hissed that outside a wooden door at my father's grand retirement party. And my father, standing right there in his perfectly tailored custom blue suit, just stood still and said nothing. I walked out. I did not panic. I did not cry. Within 1 hour, I opened my banking software, severed the secure guarantor link to the account that funded his massive company, and fell right asleep. When I woke up, there were 56 missed calls, and they were all pounding on my front door. But they were not there to apologize. They were there because one simple trust transfer they forgot about had just destroyed all their lies. Before I continue, please take a fast second to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with my story. Drop a comment below telling me exactly where you are watching from and what the time is there. The air at Radnor Lake in Nashville was biting cold on Tuesday, October 15, 2024. It was exactly 6:15 in the morning. I pulled my gray fleece jacket tighter against my chest. The water looked like dark, still glass, reflecting the dying yellow leaves of the oak trees. I walked the 2-mile dirt trail every morning. It was the only place where the world was quiet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not need to look at the screen to know who it was. The custom ringtone was a soft, sharp chime. It was Vada, my stepmother. I stopped walking and pulled out the phone. Merritt, dear, just a reminder about your father's retirement party this Friday at 7 p.m. at the Belmead Country Club. Please try to wear something bright. We want happy family photos. Also, Aunt Eudora is coming. You can sit with her at table 12. She needs someone to cut her food. I read the text twice. Table 12 was by the kitchen doors. Aunt Eudora was 90 and mostly deaf. I took a deep breath of the freezing air. The steam from my breath faded into the morning fog. I will wear navy blue, Vada, I whispered to the empty trail, and I will sit exactly where you put me. I am 34 years old. I am a senior corporate attorney at Miller, Wright & Associates, located on the top floor of a glass building in downtown Nashville. I spend my days moving millions of dollars on paper. I build invisible walls around massive wealth. I write contracts that bind people for decades. I know how to find the hidden traps in any deal. But with my family, I am just Merritt, the quiet one, the one who wears boring colors, the one who sits by the kitchen door. By 8:30 a.m., I was sitting at my large oak desk at the law firm. The city traffic moved silently far below my window. My computer screen showed the details of a new trust fund I was building for a client. The numbers were large, but numbers do not scare me. Numbers make sense. They always add up. They never smile at you while planning to push you out of a picture. My office phone rang. It was the private line. Merritt Whitmore speaking. Merritt, sweetie. A deep, smooth voice said. It was my father, Thaddeus Whitmore. My stomach tightened, just a little. Good morning, Dad. How are you? Busy, he said, sighing heavily. Wrapping up 40 years at Whitmore Engineering. Can you believe it? Friday is the big day. Handing the keys over to your brother. It feels strange. My half-brother Thatcher was 26. He had a degree he barely passed and a habit of buying very fast cars. He had worked at the company for 3 years. I know, Dad. It is a big step for him, I said, keeping my voice flat and polite. Yes, well, he has the natural charm for it. The investors love him. Oh, by the way, I need a quick favor. My personal lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, is on vacation. I need someone to look over a tiny change in our family's holding company operating agreement before Friday. Just a formality. Can I send it to your email? You have a few minutes, right? Dad, I specialize in corporate structuring, not family wills, I said softly. But I can look. What is the change? Oh, just moving a few assets around, making sure Vada and Thatcher have clear control of the voting shares. I put a little something in there for you too, do not worry. A nice cash gift in exchange for your minority stake. You work so hard at that little firm of yours. I want you to be comfortable. That little firm. My firm made $50 million last year. Send it over, Dad. I will read it. Good girl. See you Friday. Dress nice. The line clicked dead. He did not say goodbye. He never did. I opened my email a minute later. The document from his office was attached. I clicked it. The screen glared white in the quiet room. I scrolled down to page 4, section B. My eyes scanned the legal words. I have read thousands of these pages. My father was not just handing the company to Thatcher. He was legally locking me out of the family's holding company entirely. The nice cash gift was exactly $50,000. The rest of the corporate voting rights and asset control, worth nearly $80 million, was completely wrapped up in a closed trust for Vada and Thatcher. There was a specific clause at the bottom. It said that if anyone tried to fight the restructuring, they would lose everything. It was a very smart, very cruel document. Mr. Abernathy had done a good job. I leaned back in my leather chair. The office was completely silent. I did not cry. I stopped crying over my father when I was 12 years old, the year my mother died and he married Vada 6 months later. I looked at the document again. They thought I was just the quiet, useless daughter who sat in the corner. They thought I would take the $50,000 and say thank you. I opened a hidden file on my computer desktop. It was labeled MW Private Equity LLC. I had started it 7 years ago, the day I realized my family only loved me when they needed a background character for their perfect lives. For 7 years I had quietly built my own empire. I had invested smartly. I had taken massive corporate bonuses and hidden them in legal structures so complex that even Mr. Abernathy would get a headache trying to read them. The balance at the bottom of my private LLC account read $17,450,000. I smiled. It was a small, cold smile. "I will see you on Friday, Dad," I whispered to the screen. Thursday passed in a blur of corporate meetings and endless paperwork. By Friday, October 18, 2024, the weather in Nashville had warmed slightly, but the air still felt sharp. I spent my lunch hour at the First Horizon Bank on Main Street. I sat in a private room with a wealth manager. I signed 3 heavy paper documents. With a few strokes of my black ink pen, my $17.4 million was moved into a blind trust. It was completely secure. No one in my family could ever touch it, find it, or even know it existed. At 6:45 p.m. that evening, I pulled my dark gray 2018 Honda Accord up to the bright entrance of the Belle Meade Country Club. The driveway was already lined with black Mercedes and shiny red Porsches. The young valet took my keys without making eye contact. I smoothed the front of my navy blue dress. It was a high-quality wool dress, perfectly tailored, but completely plain. It was exactly the kind of dress that made you disappear in a room full of sparkling gowns and sharp tuxedos. I pushed open the heavy oak doors. The smell of expensive roasted prime rib and heavy vanilla perfume hit me instantly. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, throwing warm golden light over the guests. A string quartet played soft classical music in the corner. Vada was standing by the entrance. She wore a bright crimson dress that swept the floor. Diamonds sparkled loudly on her neck and wrists. When she saw me, her bright white smile tightened just a fraction of an inch. "Merritt," she said, leaning in. She kissed the empty air right next to my right ear. She smelled like strong roses and hairspray. "You actually wore that. It is so practical." "Good evening, Vada. The club looks beautiful," I replied evenly. "Yes, well, Thatcher picked the floral arrangements. He has such a wonderful eye for detail," she said, patting a tall vase of white lilies. "Anyway, your table is straight in the back. Aunt Eudora is already there. Please make sure she does not drop her soup on the carpet." She turned away before I could answer, flashing her big smile at a new group of arriving guests. I walked slowly through the grand hall. I passed tables filled with laughing people, city politicians and rich investors. No one looked at me. I was just Thaddeus Whitmore's quiet daughter from his first marriage. I finally found table 12. It was pushed deeply into a dark corner, exactly 3 feet away from the heavy wooden kitchen doors. Every time a waiter walked through, the loud sounds of crashing plates and shouting cooks spilled over our table. Aunt Eudora sat in a wheelchair, staring blankly at a silver spoon. "Hello, Aunt Eudora," I said, sitting down. She did not hear me. I sat there for 30 minutes. The party was loud and bright, but my corner was cold. I watched my father stand at the front of the room. He was laughing, holding a glass of dark whiskey, his arm proudly wrapped around Thatcher's shoulder. Thatcher was wearing a custom blue tuxedo. He looked handsome and completely carefree. My chest felt tight, like a heavy stone was resting on my ribs. I picked up my water glass. The ice clinked against the crystal. My hands were freezing. At 7:30 p.m., the speeches were about to begin. I realized I had left the small silver watch I bought for my father as a retirement gift in my coat pocket. The coat check was down a quiet hallway near the private family lounge. I stood up and walked away from the loud kitchen doors. The hallway was completely empty and covered in thick, soft red carpet that hid the sound of my footsteps. As I walked past the private lounge, I noticed the heavy mahogany door was open just a crack. Yellow light spilled out onto the red carpet. I heard ice clinking into a glass, and then I heard my father's voice. "Is everyone seated?" my father asked. He sounded tired. Yes, Vada's sharp voice answered. Even Merritt. She came in looking like a shadow, as usual. Thatcher laughed loudly. I saw her by the kitchen. Why does she always look so miserable? It is a party, not a funeral. I stopped walking. My breath caught in my throat. I stood perfectly still in the quiet hallway. Leave her be, my father said, sighing. She is what she is, the frigid daughter who can't do anything right. Let her sit in the back. I just hope she doesn't ruin the photos with that sour face. She brings the whole mood down, Thaddeus. Vada sneered, her voice dropping into a cold, hard tone. If she causes a scene tonight, or tries to talk to the investors about her boring legal job, I swear, I will have security remove this useless woman from the building. She won't cause a scene, Thatcher said dismissively. She never does anything. I stood outside the door. The stone in my chest did not break. It turned to pure, solid ice. I did not gasp. I did not cry. My heart beat slowly and steadily. Useless woman. I looked down at my hands. They were perfectly steady. I turned around on the soft red carpet. I did not go to the coat room. I did not go back to table 12. I walked straight down the hallway, pushed the heavy oak doors open, and stepped out into the freezing October night. I walked fast across the dark parking lot. The cold wind bit at my face, but I barely felt it. The valet boy blinked in surprise as I handed him my ticket. He brought my gray Honda Accord around in less than a minute. I got inside, shut the heavy door, and locked it. The sudden silence inside the car felt like a thick blanket. I did not turn the key yet. Instead, I reached into my leather work bag on the passenger seat. I pulled out my secure work tablet. The screen glowed bright blue in the dark car. At lunch today, I had signed the papers to create my blind trust, but the money, my $17.4 million, was still sitting in the joint irrevocable trust, which was legally tied as a liquidity guarantee for the Whitmore family master account. My father had set it up that way 20 years ago. He always told me it was to get better interest rates. In reality, keeping my massive, quietly earned wealth under his umbrella made Whitmore Engineering look incredibly cash-rich to the banks. It was the only reason the banks still gave him huge loans. I opened the First Horizon Bank private portal. The time was 7:42 p.m. I looked at the green button on the screen. It said, "Execute final transfer and sever guarantor link." If I pressed it, my money would vanish from the Whitmore family system forever. The bank's computers would instantly recalculate my father's total debt-to-equity ratio. His credit lines would freeze. Automated alerts would immediately ping his phone and his accountant's phone. I thought about table 12. I thought about the words useless woman. I pressed the green button. The screen loaded for 3 seconds. Then, a small checkmark appeared. Transfer complete. Link severed. I put the tablet back in my bag, turned the key, and drove out of the country club. I turned right onto Harding Pike. I turned on the heater, letting the warm air blow on my freezing hands. I drove exactly at the speed limit. I felt completely awake, more than I had in years. 10 minutes later, as I was driving down West End Avenue, my phone lit up in the cup holder. It was my father. I let it ring. 30 seconds later it rang again. Thatcher. I let it ring. Then came Vada. Then my father again. Then Mr. Abernathy, the family lawyer, calling from his vacation in Florida. The screen flashed bright, went dark, and flashed bright again, over and over. By the time I parked in the driveway of my small brick townhouse in Sylvan Park, the digital clock on my dashboard read 8:15 p.m. The screen on my phone showed 56 missed calls. I picked up my bag, walked up my short front steps, and unlocked my door. My house was small, neat and quiet. I walked into the kitchen and put a kettle of water on the stove. I wanted a cup of chamomile tea. I felt very calm. The heavy stone in my chest was completely gone. At exactly 8:42 p.m., bright white headlights swept across my living room wall. A car had parked sideways in my driveway, blocking my Honda. Car doors slammed hard. Heavy footsteps ran up my wooden porch steps. Then came the banging. It was not a polite knock. It was the frantic, heavy pounding of someone losing control. I poured hot water into my teacup. I walked slowly to the front door and looked through the glass peephole. My father stood there, his face red and sweating, his expensive tuxedo jacket unbuttoned. Thatcher was standing right behind him, holding his phone, looking pale and terrified. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open just a few inches. The cold air rushed in. "Merritt," my father hissed. He kept his voice low, looking quickly at the neighbors' dark houses. He forced a very tight, fake smile. What are you doing? Why did you leave the party? And why is my bank sending me emergency fraud alerts? Hello, Dad, I said softly. I took a sip of my tea. It was perfectly warm. I was tired, and there is no fraud. I simply moved my own money into an independent trust. Thatcher pushed closer to the door. His eyes were wide. Your money? Merritt, you drained the master account. The system shows a $17 million withdrawal. The bank's automated system just locked the company's operating accounts because our liquidity dropped below the minimum covenant limit. That is correct, I said, my voice completely flat. My personal savings are no longer part of your master account. I am sure Whitmore Engineering has enough of its own capital to stay open, right? My father stared at me. The fake smile slowly melted off his face. For the first time in 34 years, he looked at me and actually saw me. He did not see a quiet girl in a boring dress. He saw a corporate attorney who had just read his financial reality like a simple children's book. Merritt, my father whispered, his voice shaking slightly. The investors, the loans for Thatcher's new project, they are tied to that master account balance. If you do not put that money back by Monday morning, the bank will call in our loans. We will lose the company. That sounds like a serious problem, Thaddeus, I said politely. I used his first name. He blinked, stepping back as if I had slapped him. You cannot do this to your family, Thatcher said, his voice cracking. He sounded like a panicked little boy, not a company president. I am just a useless woman, I said softly, looking directly into my father's eyes. Security should probably remove me. I closed the heavy wooden door. I turned the deadbolt until it clicked. Monday, October 21st, 2024, 7:15 a.m. My office at Miller, Wright & Associates smelled like dark roast coffee and expensive printer ink. Outside my large glass window, the Nashville morning was gray. Heavy rain hit the glass in a slow, steady rhythm. Inside, my desk was perfectly organized. 3 silver pens sat in a neat row. My computer screen glowed softly. My private desk phone rang. It was not the main office line. It was my cell phone resting on the wooden table. I looked at the bright screen. Vada. I let it ring 3 times. The sound of the custom chime felt very loud in the quiet room. Finally, I picked it up. Merritt, sweet girl, Vada said. Her voice was thick and smooth, like honey. It was the exact voice she used when she wanted the best table at a crowded restaurant. We were all just so tired on Friday. People say silly things when they are very tired. Your father did not sleep all weekend. He is so worried about you. I slept perfectly, Vada, I said. My voice was completely calm. Merritt, please, listen to me, she said. The sweet tone dropped just a little bit. A sharp, angry edge cut through the honey. You are hurting the family name. Thatcher is supposed to sign the final papers for the new downtown office building today at noon. The bank is blocking his signature. You need to call First Horizon right now. Just tell them it was a computer mistake. Move the money back. We can buy you a nice new car to say sorry. How about a white Mercedes? I looked at my $17.4 million balance on my computer screen. I remembered the heavy kitchen doors at table 12. I remembered the way my father's voice sounded in the hallway when he called me frigid. I do not want a Mercedes, Vada. I like my gray Honda. Merritt, she snapped. The sweet tone was completely gone now. She was almost shouting. You are being a terrible, selfish daughter. If you do not fix this by noon, I swear to you I will make sure you... I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red button. The call ended. The room was quiet again, except for the rain hitting the window. I took a slow, deep breath. A light knock came from my open office door. It was Gideon Royce. He was the senior partner at my law firm. He was 62 years old, wore round glasses, and always spoke very quietly. Over the last 7 years, Gideon had taught me everything about corporate law. He was the one who noticed how hard I worked. He never shouted. He never called me useless. Good morning, Merritt, Gideon said. He walked in and sat in the heavy leather chair across from my desk. He was holding a thick blue folder. I got a very interesting phone call from the president of First Horizon Bank this morning at 6. I sat up straight. Did he ask about my new trust? No. Gideon smiled gently, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He knows better than to question a legal trust built by my smartest lawyer. But he did ask if Miller, Wright & Associates, was planning to represent Whitmore Engineering in a massive bankruptcy case. I frowned. My eyebrows pulled together. Bankruptcy. Taking my money out dropped their liquidity, yes. But my father's company is valued at $80 million in physical assets. They have massive machines, land, and inventory. They can easily get a temporary bridge loan to fix the cash flow. Gideon pushed the blue folder slowly across my smooth oak desk. That is what I thought too. So, I did a little digging this weekend. Since you are my favorite person in this building, I wanted to make sure you were completely safe from any fallout. I opened the folder. The paper inside was a private financial summary of Whitmore Engineering. It was dated back to the year 2022. Look at the third page, Merritt, Gideon said softly. I turned the heavy paper. My eyes scanned the long lines of numbers. I read balance sheets for a living. I could spot a lie in a column of numbers in 10 seconds. My heart started to beat a little faster. This cannot be right, I whispered. My finger traced a line of red ink. Numbers never lie, Gideon said. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. Your father's company is not functionally worth $80 million. They have the physical assets, yes, but they are over-leveraged with $60 million in shadow debt. I looked closely at the dates. In March of 2022, Thatcher had started his first big project as vice president. It was a massive shipping contract. I remembered that year. I was working 80-hour weeks at the law firm, sitting alone in my office. Thatcher was taking private jets to Miami to celebrate his new title. But the project was a massive failure. To cover up Thatcher's terrible mistake and save the perfect family image, my father had secretly taken out $60 million in hidden high-interest loans using off-balance sheet entities. He used your personal account balance to trick the lenders, Gideon explained, watching my face carefully. Because your $17 million was sitting untouched in the joint trust, the bank thought the company had strong cash reserves. They never checked the deep files. You were the only thing holding the entire company up, Merritt. I stared at the paper. The air in my lungs felt very cold. For 7 years I thought I was just hiding my hard-earned money in his account to keep the peace. But he was actually using my money as a shield to protect Thatcher from his own stupidity. The useless daughter was secretly funding the Golden Boy's mistakes. What happens at noon today, when Thatcher tries to sign the new building contract? I asked. My voice was very quiet. The bank's computers will do a mandatory full scan, Gideon said. Without your $17 million covering the hole, the system will instantly see the $60 million in hidden debt. The bank will freeze everything. Whitmore Engineering will fall down like a house of cards. I looked out the window at the Nashville rain. My family had spent my whole life pushing me into the dark, ignoring me until they needed me to sit in a corner. Now the light was going to burn them completely. Do you want me to make a few phone calls to protect your personal name from the mess, Merritt? Gideon asked gently. He was offering his help. He was standing with me. Yes, Gideon, I said, closing the blue folder. Protect my name, and let Whitmore Engineering burn. Monday, October 21st, 2024. 10:30 a.m. The rain continued to fall over downtown Nashville. I sat inside conference room 402 at my law firm. The room was a perfect square of thick glass. It was completely soundproof. Sitting inside it felt like being inside a quiet, cold diamond. Gideon sat to my right. On my left sat Linnea, our firm's best forensic accountant. She was 28, wore bright red glasses, and could read a bank statement faster than anyone I knew. I have built the legal wall, Linnea said quietly. Her fingers flew across her silver laptop keyboard. I tracked every document your father filed with First Horizon Bank since 2022. He never forged your signature, Merritt. He was too smart for that. Instead, he used a loophole. Because your account was opened when you were a teenager, he kept himself listed as a view-only guardian. He used that status to auto-generate proof of funds letters for the bank. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 10:45 a.m. Can the bank tie my money to Thatcher's $60 million debt? I asked. My voice was steady, but my fingers held my coffee cup very tightly. No, Gideon answered. He pushed a clean white paper toward me. It was a release form. You severed the guarantor link legally on Friday night. Your $17 million is sitting in a blind trust. It is completely clean. The fire will not touch you. But Merritt, when the clock hits noon, Whitmore Engineering will burn to the ground. I signed the white paper. I felt a strange tightness in my throat. It was not regret. It was the heavy sadness of finally understanding the truth. For years I thought they ignored me because I was boring. But they ignored me because keeping me quiet and lonely was the easiest way to keep my money in their system. The telephone in the center of the glass table beeped. Merritt, the receptionist's voice came through the speaker. I am sorry to bother you, but your brother, Thatcher Whitmore, and a Mr. Silas Abernathy are in the lobby. They are demanding to see you. Mr. Abernathy says it is a family emergency. Gideon looked at me. I can have security send them away. I looked at the clock. 11:10 a.m. 50 minutes until Thatcher was supposed to sign his new contract. 50 minutes until the bank's computers locked everything. No, I said softly. Send them up to room 402. 5 minutes later, the heavy glass door opened. Thatcher walked in first. He looked terrible. His custom blue suit was wrinkled, his hair was messy, and his face was pale and sweating. Mr. Abernathy walked in behind him. The family lawyer was a tall man with silver hair. He usually looked very proud, but today he looked out of breath. He had clearly flown back from Florida in a panic. They stood in the doorway. They looked at the large glass room, at Gideon in his expensive suit, and at Linnea with her glowing laptop. Finally, they looked at me. I was wearing my dark gray business suit. I sat at the head of the long oak table. I did not stand up. I did not offer them a chair. Merritt, Mr. Abernathy said. He tried to use his deep, commanding voice, but it shook a little. This has gone far enough. Your father is having chest pains. Vada is in tears. We need you to reverse the transfer right now. You are putting a 40-year-old family business in danger over a silly temper tantrum. I looked at him. I did not blink. Good morning, Silas. How was the weather in Florida? Thatcher stepped forward, putting his hands flat on the glass table. Stop playing games. The bank is calling my phone every 10 minutes. If they do a full scan at noon, they will see the other loans. Everything will be ruined. You have to fix it. I tilted my head slightly. The other loans? You mean the $60 million Thaddeus borrowed in 2022 to cover your failed shipping project, Thatcher? Thatcher stopped breathing. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Mr. Abernathy's face turned bright red. How did you? Listen to me, Merritt. You are legally obligated to support the master account. We can sue you for damages if you cause this bankruptcy. Gideon laughed. It was a short, dry sound. Mr. Abernathy, Gideon said quietly, I strongly suggest you stop talking. If you threaten my client again, I will personally send Linnea's audit of your fake proof of funds letters directly to the FBI. You will lose your law license by dinner time. Mr. Abernathy froze. He looked at Gideon, then at Linnea's laptop. The proud lawyer suddenly looked very old and very small. He took a step back toward the door. Merritt, please, Thatcher whispered. His voice was completely broken. Tears filled his eyes. I am your brother. I am supposed to be the president today. Please, Dad said you would fix it. He said you always do what you are told. I looked at Thatcher. For a second I remembered when we were kids. I remembered helping him tie his shoes because Vada was too busy looking in the mirror. I felt a tiny pull in my heart. But then I remembered the heavy kitchen doors. I remembered the words useless woman. I am doing exactly what I was told, Thatcher, I said softly. My voice was not angry. It was just empty. On Friday night, Vada told me that if I caused a scene, security would remove me. So, I removed myself. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 11:45 a.m. You have 15 minutes to call the bank and confess, Thatcher, I said. I suggest you leave my building. Monday, October 21st, 2024. 11:58 a.m. Thatcher did not move. He stood perfectly still in the soundproof glass room. His breathing was fast and shallow. Mr. Abernathy grabbed Thatcher's arm. The old lawyer knew it was over. He pulled Thatcher toward the heavy glass door. Come on, Thatcher, Mr. Abernathy muttered, looking at the floor. We have to call the board of directors. We have to warn them. Thatcher let himself be pulled out of the room. The heavy door clicked shut behind them. The silence returned instantly. It was just me, Gideon, and Linnea. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. The red numbers glowed brightly in the gray morning light. 11:59 a.m. Outside, the Nashville rain beat against the large window. The water ran down the glass like tears. Inside, I felt nothing but a strange, deep quiet. For 34 years, my family had built a massive, shiny wall to keep me out. Now, I was sitting comfortably in a warm room, watching their wall slowly fall apart. 12 p.m., a sharp, high beep came from Linnea's silver laptop. Then came another beep, and another. Linnea pushed her bright red glasses up her nose. Her fingers typed quickly. It is done, Merritt, she said softly. First Horizon Bank's automated system just scanned the Whitmore Engineering master account. The system found the $60 million debt hole. The algorithm instantly triggered a hard freeze. What does that look like on their end? Gideon asked quietly. Every company credit card will decline, Linnea read from her screen. The payroll accounts are locked. The suppliers cannot be paid. And the new downtown building contract that Thatcher was supposed to sign, the bank just canceled the bridge loan for it. Whitmore Engineering is officially out of money. I closed my eyes for a second. The toxic equilibrium was broken. The fake peace was over. Merritt, Linnea said. Her voice changed. It sounded softer, almost sad. While you were talking to Thatcher, I dug a little deeper into the bank's old archives. I found a string of private emails between your father and Vada from 2019. I opened my eyes. 2019, that was the year I passed the bar exam. That was the year I asked my father for a seat on the company board. Linnea nodded slowly. She turned the laptop screen toward me. Look at this email from Vada to your father. It was sent the day after you asked for that board seat. I leaned forward. The screen was bright. I read the words Vada had typed 7 years ago. Thaddeus, we cannot let Merritt on the board. If she sees the real numbers, she will realize that her late mother's original shares give her a legal right to claim 30% of the company. She is getting too smart. You need to keep her in the dark, keep her feeling small, make her feel like she does not belong. Do not invite her to the important dinners. Give her the corner table at parties. If we make her think she is useless, she will never fight us for her mother's shares. She will just stay quiet and leave her money in the master account. I stared at the black text on the white screen. The air in the room felt very thin. My breathing slowed down. For years I thought I was just naturally unlovable. I thought I was too quiet, too boring, and too plain to be part of my own family. I thought Vada's cruel jokes and my father's cold looks were just my fault. But it was not a personality clash. It was a business strategy. My depression, my isolation, my lonely weekends, it was all carefully planned by Vada. She was the architect of my pain. She used psychological abuse as a tool to protect her wealth. She made me hate myself so I would never look at my own bank accounts. They stole your confidence to steal your mother's legacy, Gideon said. His voice was heavy with disgust. He placed a warm hand on my shoulder. I have seen a lot of greedy families in my career, Merritt, but this is the coldest thing I have ever read. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of pure, focused anger. The heavy stone in my chest did not return. Instead, a small, hot fire started to burn behind my ribs. My cell phone on the table began to buzz. The caller ID showed a number I had not seen in a long time. It was the direct line for the First Horizon Bank's chief restructuring officer. They are calling you, Merritt, Gideon said, pulling his hand back. Because you are the only person connected to the Whitmore family who actually has any real cash left. They are going to ask if you want to buy the company's debt. I looked at the phone buzzing on the smooth oak table. I looked at the email from Vada, calling me useless. I looked at Linnea and Gideon, my real team, my real family. I picked up the phone. This is Merritt Whitmore, I said. My voice was no longer quiet. It was clear and sharp like breaking glass. Miss Whitmore, a nervous man's voice said, your family's company is in free fall. We are preparing to seize all assets by Friday. Unless you are willing to negotiate a bailout. I looked out the window at the Nashville skyline. I do not want to bail them out, I said calmly. I want to buy them out. Send the bankruptcy papers to my office. Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, 9 a.m. 3 weeks had passed since the bank froze the accounts at Whitmore Engineering. In the real corporate world, justice does not happen overnight. There are no sudden police raids or dramatic courtroom shouts. Real power moves slowly, wrapped in heavy white paper and silent emails. The air in Nashville had turned completely cold. The leaves on the trees were gone, leaving behind empty brown branches. I sat in the main executive boardroom on the 15th floor of First Horizon Bank on Main Street. The room smelled like lemon polish and expensive leather. Across the wide mahogany table sat Mr. Tolliver, the chief restructuring officer of the bank. He looked very tired. He had spent the last 3 weeks dealing with my father's desperate phone calls. Gideon sat quietly on my right. Linnea sat on my left, her red glasses shining under the bright ceiling lights. We were my true team. We did not need to speak to understand each other. Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Tolliver said, sliding a thick stack of legal documents across the shiny table. The bank has agreed to your terms. We are selling $30 million of the defaulted debt portfolio of Whitmore Engineering directly to your private equity LLC. I picked up my silver pen. Here is how the cold math of corporate debt works. When a company is completely broken and cannot pay back $60 million, the bank panics. They just want to get rid of the problem and save some of their money. So, I offered to buy my father's worst-performing shadow debt from the bank for exactly $18 million in cash from my private LLC. The bank took the $18 million and walked away. I signed my name on the last page, Merritt Whitmore, Managing Director, MW Holdings LLC. With that single signature, I did not buy my father's company. I bought his loans. Thaddeus Whitmore no longer owed $30 million to First Horizon Bank. He owed it to me. I was now the absolute owner of his financial life. If he missed a single payment under the accelerated default clauses, I had the legal right to take his business, his warehouses, and even the beautiful brick mansion he lived in with Vada. Mr. Tolliver stood up and shook my hand. He looked at me with deep respect. He did not see a quiet girl in a boring dress. He saw a predator who had just swallowed a whale without making a single sound. Tuesday, November 12, 2024, 6:30 p.m. Later that evening, I sat on the soft gray sofa in my small townhouse in Sylvan Park. The fireplace was burning quietly. The house was perfectly warm. Outside, the cold wind pushed against the windows. For 3 weeks, my father had called my phone 104 times. I did not answer once. Thatcher had sent 50 text messages. The messages started with anger, then turned to panic, and finally became pathetic begging. I read them all, but I never replied. But Vada had not called. Vada was too smart to beg. I looked at the small glass coffee table in front of me. On the table was a thick, cream-colored envelope. It had arrived in my mailbox that afternoon. The handwriting on the front was perfect and elegant. I opened it slowly. The paper inside smelled faintly of strong roses and hairspray. It was a handwritten letter from Vada. Dear Merritt, we are so very disappointed in your recent behavior. Your father's blood pressure has been dangerously high because of the stress you are causing this family. Thatcher has not slept in days. We understand that you felt a little left out at the party. You have always been so sensitive and quick to misunderstand things. However, we are a family. Families forgive. We have saved a seat for you at our Thanksgiving dinner table next week. Please come home. Bring your checkbook so we can finally fix this silly little misunderstanding with the bank. We are willing to let this go and welcome you back, as long as you do the right thing. Love, Vada. I read the letter 3 times. The fire popped softly in the background. Before I read that hidden email in Linea's office 3 weeks ago, this letter would have broken my heart. I would have felt guilty. I would have believed that I was too sensitive, just like Vada said. I would have blamed myself for my father's high blood pressure. But now, I saw the letter for exactly what it was. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. She did not apologize. She blamed my reaction, calling it a silly little misunderstanding. She tried to make me feel responsible for my father's health. She offered me a seat at her table, but only if I brought my checkbook to save her perfect life. It was polite cruelty. It was a beautiful mask hiding a very ugly face. I did not tear the letter up. I folded it neatly and placed it back into the cream envelope. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to remember exactly who I was dealing with. I picked up my phone and called Gideon. He answered on the first ring. Did the final paperwork process through the city courts? I asked gently. Yes, Merritt, Gideon said. His voice was warm and calm. You are officially the sole primary creditor. Whitmore Engineering missed their required monthly payment yesterday. They are legally in default. Good, I said, watching the yellow flames in my fireplace. Should I send the notice of default to your father in the mail? Gideon asked. I thought about the heavy kitchen doors at the country club. I thought about the words useless woman. I thought about Vada waiting for me to come to Thanksgiving and quietly hand over my money. No, Gideon, I said softly. Do not mail it. We are going to deliver the papers in person, tomorrow morning. Call Linnea and tell her to wear her best suit. The time for hiding in the corner was over. Wednesday, November 13, 2024, 9:45 a.m. The headquarters of Whitmore Engineering was a large, flat brick building on the industrial edge of Nashville. When I was a little girl, my father used to bring me here on Saturday mornings. Back then, the building felt like a giant magical castle. I used to sit on the floor in the corner with a coloring book, watching him make important phone calls. He always looked so big. Today, looking at the building through the windshield of my gray Honda, it just looked like a tired old box. I parked in the visitor section. The cold morning wind pulled at my dark wool coat as I stepped out. Gideon parked his black car next to me. Linnea got out of the passenger seat, holding a thick leather briefcase. We did not say a word to each other. We walked toward the glass front doors together. My flat black shoes clicked softly on the concrete. The main lobby was very quiet. Usually the phones behind the front desk rang every few seconds. Today there was no ringing. The bank had locked the operating accounts, which meant the phone bills had not been paid. Marnie, the head receptionist, sat behind the tall desk. She had worked there for 20 years. When she saw me, her eyes grew wide. "Merritt," Marnie said nervously, standing up. "It is good to see you, but your father said he is not taking any meetings today. The whole board of directors is in his office. They are trying to figure out a bank issue." I stopped at the desk. I looked at Marnie. She looked tired and scared. She probably did not know if she was going to get her paycheck on Friday. "Good morning, Marnie," I said softly. "I am not here for a meeting. We are here to make a legal delivery. Please do not try to stop us." Marnie looked at Gideon, who stood tall in his expensive suit, and then at Linnea, who held the heavy briefcase. Marnie slowly sat back down in her chair. She did not pick up her phone to warn them. She just nodded. We walked down the long carpeted hallway. The walls were covered with large, shiny framed photos. The pictures showed my father shaking hands with the mayor. They showed Thatcher wearing a hard hat, smiling at a construction site. There was not a single picture of me anywhere in the building. For 34 years I was a ghost in my own family. We reached the heavy oak double doors at the end of the hall. The gold plate on the wood read, "Thaddeus Whitmore, President." I did not knock. I pushed the heavy doors open. The large office was filled with people. My father sat behind his massive wooden desk. His face was gray, and his eyes had dark circles under them. 6 older men, the company's board of directors, sat in chairs around the room, looking at empty coffee cups. Thatcher was pacing back and forth near the large window, chewing on his thumbnail. And sitting on the expensive white leather sofa in the corner was Vada. She was wearing a bright yellow dress. She was looking at a glossy magazine about holiday table decorations. Even while the company was burning to the ground, Vada was busy planning her perfect Thanksgiving dinner. When the heavy doors clicked shut behind us, everyone in the room stopped moving. Complete silence fell over the large office. Vada looked up from her magazine. Her eyes quickly scanned my plain black suit, then moved to Gideon and Linnea. A bright fake smile instantly stretched across her face. "Merritt," Vada said. She closed her magazine and stood up. Her voice was dripping with that familiar sweet honey. "Oh, you came early. I knew you would read my letter and come to your senses. Did you bring your checkbook, sweetie? We can finally fix this bank mistake and go look at those new cars I promised you." She took a step toward me, opening her arms for a fake hug. I did not move. I just looked at her. "Hello, Vada," I said. My voice was very calm and very quiet. It echoed perfectly in the silent room. "I did read your letter. It was very polite." My father stood up from his desk. He leaned heavily on his hands. "Merritt," he said. His voice was thick and raspy. "You brought Gideon. Good. Let's just sign the papers to put your money back into the master account. The board members are here to witness it. We can save the company today." "I am not here to put money into your account, Thaddeus," I said smoothly. Thatcher stopped pacing. He stared at me from the window. "Then why are you here? To watch us suffer?" I turned slightly to Linnea. She opened her leather briefcase with a sharp click. She pulled out a thick blue folder and handed it to me. "I am here," I said, looking directly at my father, "because Whitmore Engineering missed its mandatory debt payment and breached its financial covenants to First Horizon Bank yesterday at 5 p.m. According to corporate law, hiding off-balance sheet loans triggers an immediate notice of acceleration and permanent default. "We know that, Merritt," my father shouted. His face turned red. "The bank froze our money. How can we pay the bank when the bank will not let us touch our cash?" "It is a trap." "It is a trap," I agreed softly. I walked slowly across the thick carpet. I stopped right in front of his massive wooden desk. "But you do not owe the money to First Horizon Bank anymore, Thaddeus." I placed the thick blue folder on the center of his desk. "The bank sold your debt yesterday morning," I explained, keeping my voice perfectly flat. "They sold $30 million of it. I bought it, through my private equity firm." The room became so quiet I could hear the wind blowing against the glass window outside. My father looked down at the blue folder. His hands started to shake. "I am not here as your daughter," I said. I looked into his eyes. There was no sadness left in me. There was only the cold, hard truth. "I am here as your primary creditor. You missed your payment to me. So, I am legally taking ownership of this building, the machines, the land, and every single dollar this company has left." Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, 10:02 a.m. The large office was so quiet that I could hear the faint, rapid ticking of my father's expensive gold watch. My father stared at the blue folder resting on his clean desk. He did not touch it. He looked at it as if it were a poisonous snake. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Finally, Mr. Calloway, the oldest member of the board of directors, stood up. He walked slowly to the desk. He wore a gray suit and had a very serious face. He reached out with a wrinkled hand and opened the blue folder. He put on his reading glasses. The room waited. Thatcher stopped chewing his thumbnail. Vada stood perfectly still by the white leather sofa, her hands gripping the edges of her yellow dress. Mr. Calloway turned the thick, heavy pages. His eyes moved quickly across the black text. After a full minute, he looked up. He did not look at my father. He looked directly at me. "The signatures are certified," Mr. Calloway said. His voice was dry and scratchy like old paper. "The debt transfer is absolute." She invoked the acceleration clause, Thaddeus. "All 30 million of it. The master loans, the equipment liens, and the mortgage on this building." "No!" Thatcher shouted. He stepped away from the window. His face was red and his voice cracked loudly. "That is impossible. She is just a junior lawyer. She does not have $18 million in cash to buy bank debt. She drives a 10-year-old Honda." I did not turn to look at Thatcher. I kept my eyes on my father. "Thatcher," I said softly, the quiet sound of my voice easily cutting through his shouting. "The Honda is a 2018 model. It gets excellent gas mileage. And I am a senior partner at my firm. I have been moving international corporate money since you were failing your freshman college exams. Your father knew I had the money. He just chose to use it as a blanket to hide your mistakes, instead of asking me for help." My father finally touched the folder. His thick fingers pressed against the white paper. He looked up at me. The pride that usually filled his eyes was completely gone. "Merritt," my father whispered. It was the same voice he used when a big client was angry with him, a voice full of fear and careful calculation. "Merritt, please, let's talk about this privately. Just you and me. We can work out a payment plan. I can give you 10% of the company profits." "There are no profits, Thaddeus," Linnea spoke up from my left side. Her voice was sharp and clear. "I have audited your books. You are spending $60,000 a month just to keep Thatcher's private jet membership active, while you are 3 months behind on paying your factory workers' health insurance." Mr. Calloway and the other board members suddenly sat up straight. They looked at my father with wide, angry eyes. My father had kept the real numbers hidden from everyone, even his own board. Vada took a step forward. The sweet, fake smile was completely gone from her face. Her lips were pressed together in a tight, thin line. The skin around her eyes looked tight and mean. "You ungrateful little girl," Vada hissed. Her voice dropped its polite tone. It was cold and sharp. "After everything this family has given you, we gave you a beautiful home. We invited you to our parties. I made sure you had a seat at the table. And this is how you repay us? By destroying your father's legacy in front of strangers?" I turned my head slowly to look at Vada. For a long time her words would have made my stomach twist with guilt. I would have looked at the floor. But today, standing in the bright morning light, I just saw a frightened woman in a yellow dress. "You did not give me a home, Vada," I said. My voice was as calm as the quiet lake water I walked by every morning. "You gave me a room at the end of the hall where you could not hear me breathe. You gave me the table by the kitchen doors. You gave me silence." I reached into the pocket of my dark wool coat. I pulled out a folded piece of white paper. It was a printed copy of the email Linnea found, the email from 2019. I gently placed it on top of the blue folder. "I read your email to Thaddeus from 7 years ago, Vada," I said quietly. "The one where you told him to keep me feeling small and useless, so I would never ask for my mother's shares of the business. You did not invite me to parties because you loved me. You kept me close enough to control my bank account, and far enough away to break my spirit." Vada stared at the printed paper. Her hands started to shake. The heavy rose perfume she wore suddenly smelled sour in the warm room. She looked at my father, waiting for him to defend her. But my father did not speak. He just stared at the desk. He was a man who only respected power. And right now, all the power in the room was standing on my side of the desk. "This is my company," Thatcher suddenly yelled, rushing forward. He slammed his hand on the desk, right next to the blue folder. "I am the president. You cannot just walk in here and take it. I will call the police. I will have security throw you out into the street." I looked at Thatcher's soft hands and his expensive watch. I felt a deep, heavy exhaustion. He was like a child wearing a paper crown, pretending to be a king in a burning castle. "Thatcher," I said, looking at the digital clock on the wall. It was 10:15 a.m. "You are not the president, because as of 15 minutes ago, this company no longer exists in its current form. And as for security," the heavy oak doors behind us clicked open. Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. 10:16 a.m. The heavy oak doors clicked open. Two men walked into the large office. They wore dark gray uniforms. It was Harlan, the head of building security, and another guard. Harlan was a tall, older man with a thick white mustache. He had worked at Whitmore Engineering for 15 years. I remembered him from when I was a teenager. He always used to hold the front door open for me when no one else noticed I was there. Thatcher pointed a shaking finger at me. Harlan, finally, grab this woman and her lawyers and throw them out of the building. They are trespassing. Harlan stopped walking. He did not look at Thatcher. He did not look at my father. He looked directly at Gideon. Gideon calmly reached into his black leather briefcase. He pulled out a single piece of heavy white paper with a bright blue court stamp on the bottom. He handed it to Harlan. "Good morning, Harlan," Gideon said quietly. "This is a court-approved order of receivership. It was signed by a city judge at 8 o'clock this morning. Because the company missed its final debt payment, Ms. Whitmore's trust now has full legal control of this property. You and your security team now work directly for her." Harlan read the paper slowly. He was a smart man. He folded the paper, put it in his front pocket, and looked up. "Understood, sir," Harlan said. He turned to look at Thatcher. "Mr. Thatcher, please lower your voice. I will not ask you again." Thatcher's mouth fell open. His arm dropped to his side. He looked like a balloon that had just lost all its air. He looked at my father for help, but my father was just staring at the blue folder on his desk. The paper crown had fallen off, and Thatcher finally realized he was standing in the ashes of his own mistakes. Mr. Calloway, the oldest board member, stood up from his chair. He buttoned his gray suit jacket. He looked very tired and very angry. "Thaddeus," Mr. Calloway said, looking down at my father, "you lied to the board. You hid $60 million of shadow debt to protect your son by using off-balance sheet entities. You used company money for private jets while the factory workers suffered. We are done here. I am calling the city regulators myself." Mr. Calloway turned and walked toward the door. The other 5 board members stood up in silence and followed him. They did not say goodbye. They walked out of the heavy oak doors, and their footsteps faded away down the long carpeted hallway. The large office was suddenly very empty. It was just me, my team, the 2 security guards, and the 3 people who used to be my family. Vada picked up her glossy magazine from the white leather sofa. Her hands were shaking so badly that the thick paper rattled. She tried to hold her chin up, trying to look proud, but the fear in her eyes was too bright. The mask was completely gone. "Thaddeus," Vada said. Her voice was thin and weak. "Do something. Call the mayor. Call the governor. She cannot just take our lives away." My father slowly sat down in his large leather chair. He looked at the window, watching the gray Nashville clouds. He looked 10 years older than he had when I walked into the room. "There is no one to call, Vada," my father said softly. His voice sounded like dry leaves scraping on a sidewalk. "She owns the paper. It is over." He finally turned his head and looked at me. For the first time in my entire life, he looked at me with actual respect. But it was too late. I did not want his respect anymore. "What happens now, Merritt?" my father asked quietly. "Do you call the police? Do you send us to jail?" "No, Thaddeus," I said, keeping my voice perfectly steady. "I am a corporate attorney. I do not deal with police. The city regulators will look at your hidden loans. The bank will look at your fake proof of funds letters. What happens with them is not my business." I stepped back from the massive wooden desk. I looked around the room. I remembered sitting on the floor in the corner with my coloring book, hoping my father would just look down and smile at me. That little girl was gone. "I am giving you until 5 p.m. today," I said smoothly. "You can take your personal photos, your clothes, and your coffee cups. You cannot take any computers, files, or company cars. At exactly 5:01 p.m., Harlan will lock the doors. If you are still inside, you will be arrested for trespassing on my property." Thatcher started to cry. It was a quiet, pathetic sound. He sat down on the floor next to the window, hiding his face in his hands. "Merritt," my father whispered, "where are we supposed to go? The bank will take the house next." "You can go anywhere you want," I said. I turned around and started walking toward the heavy oak doors. "Just do not forget to take your glossy magazines, Vada. You have a Thanksgiving dinner to plan." I walked out of the office. Gideon and Linnea walked right behind me. Harlan closed the heavy doors with a loud final click. Thursday, November 28, 2024, 2 p.m. The smell of roasted turkey and sweet cinnamon apples filled my small brick townhouse in Sylvan Park. Outside, the Nashville sky was a clear, icy blue. The bare branches of the trees shivered in the cold winter wind. But inside my house, the air was perfectly warm. The fireplace crackled happily in the corner of the living room, throwing soft orange light onto the walls. It was Thanksgiving Day. I stood in my kitchen, wearing comfortable blue jeans and a soft white sweater. I opened the oven door. The heat washed over my face. I pulled out a heavy glass dish of sweet potatoes. "Do you need help with that, Merritt?" Gideon asked. He was standing by my kitchen counter, wearing a simple gray sweater instead of his usual expensive business suit. He was carefully pouring warm apple cider into 3 thick glass mugs. "No, I have it, Gideon. Thank you," I said softly, placing the hot dish on the wooden table. Linnea walked out of the living room. She was wearing her bright red glasses and a comfortable green dress. She was carrying a stack of white plates and 3 silver forks. "The table is almost ready," Linnea smiled, setting the plates down. "Harlan sent a text message, by the way. He said the security system at the main building is running perfectly. The factory workers got their holiday bonus checks this morning. He said to tell you Happy Thanksgiving." "Tell Harlan I said thank you," I replied, feeling a deep, quiet warmth in my chest. Over the last 2 weeks, a lot had changed. I did not keep Whitmore Engineering to run it myself. I am a lawyer, not an engineer. Instead, Linnea and I worked carefully to sell the massive factory machines and the large building to a clean, honest manufacturing company in Texas. I made sure every single factory worker kept their job. I paid their missing health insurance from the sale money. I sold Thatcher's private jet membership and used the cash to double the workers' holiday bonuses. The heavy oak doors and the shiny photos of my father were thrown into a large trash bin. The empty shell of Whitmore Engineering was legally closed forever. I looked at my small wooden dining table. It only had 3 chairs. There were no crystal chandeliers hanging above it. There were no waiters rushing through loud kitchen doors. There was just quiet, honest peace. Gideon handed me a warm mug of apple cider. The glass felt good against my cold fingers. "Are you okay, Merritt?" Gideon asked gently. He looked into my eyes. He always knew how to read my quiet moods. "I am perfectly okay, Gideon," I said, taking a small sip. The sweet apple taste warmed my throat. I was just remembering last Thanksgiving. Last year Vada had hosted 80 people at the massive Belmead mansion. I wore a boring gray dress. She made me sit at a small folding table in the hallway with Thatcher's younger cousins. I ate cold mashed potatoes while listening to the loud happy laughter coming from the main dining room. I felt completely invisible. This year the Belmead mansion was empty. The city regulators had looked very closely at my father's hidden $60 million debt. When the bank saw the proof that he used fake papers to get the loans, they acted fast. The bank legally foreclosed on the mansion. They seized my father's expensive cars. The perfect, shiny life they built on top of my silent suffering was gone. Thaddeus, Vada, and Thatcher had to rent a small 2-bedroom apartment on the loud side of town. The bank froze their credit cards. Thatcher had to go to a normal office and apply for an entry-level job at a shipping company. I walked into my living room and looked out the front window. The street was quiet. Earlier this morning, I had walked down to my metal mailbox at the end of the street. Inside, there was a cheap, thin white envelope. It did not smell like expensive rose perfume. The handwriting on the front was messy. It was from Thatcher. I opened it while standing in the cold air. "Merritt," the letter said. "My used car needs new brakes. It costs $400. Dad is sick and Vada just cries all day. I know you hate us, but I need to get to work. Please. Just send $400 to my new bank account. It is nothing to you, please." I stood by the mailbox and looked at the messy words. For a brief second I remembered tying his small shoes when we were children. But then I remembered the way he laughed at me in the country club hallway. I remembered how quickly he wanted the security guards to throw me into the street. I did not feel angry. I did not feel sad. I just felt completely empty when I thought about them. The heavy stone that I carried in my chest for 34 years was truly gone. I finally understood that blood does not make a family. Loyalty, respect, and truth make a family. I walked back inside my house. I went to the small electric paper shredder in my home office. I pushed the letter in. The machine made a soft whirring sound. The paper was cut into tiny, useless pieces. I did not write back. I did not send the money. I just walked away. "Merritt," Linnea called out softly from the kitchen. "The food is getting cold." I turned away from the window. I walked back into the bright, warm kitchen. Gideon had pulled out a chair for me. It was not a chair in the corner. It was the chair at the absolute center of the table. "I am coming," I smiled. It was a real, full smile. I sat down with my real team. We passed the warm dishes, laughed at small jokes, and enjoyed the quiet afternoon. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. By 8 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, my small brick house was wonderfully quiet. Gideon and Linnea had hugged me at the front door and driven home to their own families. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the white dinner plates. The warm water ran over my hands. The kitchen smelled like sweet cinnamon apples and clean lemon soap. For the first time in 34 years, my shoulders felt completely light. I did not have to worry about wearing the right boring color to please Vada. I did not have to worry about sitting by the heavy kitchen doors so I would not ruin a family photo. I was just Merritt. And for the very first time in my life, being Merritt was enough. I dried my hands on a soft blue towel. I walked into the living room and sat on my comfortable gray sofa. The fire in the corner was burning down to soft, glowing orange coals. Outside, the Nashville wind blew hard against the glass window, but the winter cold could not reach me anymore. My cell phone buzzed softly on the glass coffee table. I looked at the bright screen. It was a new voicemail. The caller ID simply said, "Unknown number." I did not feel a panic in my chest. The heavy stone of fear was completely gone. I picked up the phone, pressed the screen and held it to my ear. Merritt, it was my father's voice. It did not sound smooth and deep like it did when he was talking to rich investors at the country club. It did not sound angry and loud like it did in his large corner office. It sounded incredibly small. It sounded like an old tired man standing alone in the dark. "I know you will not answer," my father's voice said. A car horn honked loudly in the background. He was calling from the street, probably walking near his new cheap apartment. I wanted to say it. Vada is asleep. Thatcher is looking at used cars online. The apartment is very small, Merritt. The walls are so thin. He stopped talking for a few seconds. I heard him take a slow, shaky breath. "I drove past the Belle Meade Country Club today," he continued quietly. "They were having a big holiday party. I saw the valet parking the shiny cars. I saw the bright lights. For 40 years I thought those lights were the most important thing in the world. I thought looking perfect was the only thing that mattered." I listened to the silence on the line. I did not feel pity. I just listened to the truth finally catching up to a man who had outrun it for too long. "I am sorry, Merritt," he whispered. The words sounded strange and heavy coming from him. "Not just about the money. I am sorry that I let Vada put you in the corner. I am sorry that I pretended you were useless just so Thatcher and I could feel big. You were the only real honest thing in this family, and I traded you away for a fake crown. You built a beautiful life. You did it all by yourself. Goodbye, Merritt." The line clicked dead. I sat on the soft gray sofa and looked at the phone in my hand. He had finally said the words I waited my whole childhood to hear. He finally saw me. He finally apologized for the pain he caused. 10 years ago, that phone call would have made me cry. I would have called him back immediately. I would have opened my bank accounts to save him. I would have traded all my hard-earned peace just to hear him say he loved me. But today, I just looked at the screen. I pressed the small red trash can icon. Message deleted. I put the phone down on the glass table. Some boundaries cannot be crossed. A late apology does not fix 30 years of polite cruelty. Blood gives you a shared last name, but it does not give anyone the right to break your spirit. Loyalty, respect, and kindness are the only things that make a real family. I had given my loyalty to people who threw it in the trash. Now I only gave it to people who earned it. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the soft sofa cushions. The orange light from the dying fire danced on the walls. I thought about my bank account. The $17 million in my private trust was still there, quietly growing. But the money was never the real prize. The money was just a tool. The real prize was the heavy, beautiful silence of my own house. The real prize was knowing that I would never ever be pushed into a dark corner again. The next morning, Friday, November 29th, 2024, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. I put on my gray fleece jacket and my running shoes. I drove my Honda Accord to Radnor Lake. The sun was just starting to rise over the tall oak trees, painting the sky in soft pink and bright orange colors. The morning air was freezing, but I did not pull my jacket tight. I let the cold wind wash over my face. I started walking down the long dirt trail. The dead leaves crunched loudly under my shoes. The dark lake water was as smooth as glass. I did not bring my cell phone. No one was going to text me to tell me what to wear. No one was going to call me to fix their massive mistakes. I was 34 years old. I was a senior corporate attorney. I was a protector of wealth, a builder of invisible walls, and the absolute owner of my own life. I looked out over the quiet water. I took a deep, full breath of the sharp winter air. I smiled a real, wide smile, and kept walking forward into the bright morning light. There are no false images to keep. There are no plain navy dresses to wear to please someone else. There are no kitchen doors to hide behind. I am exactly where I am supposed to be, surrounded by people who never ask me to hide myself to make them look bigger. The lake water is perfectly calm, and for the very first time in my life, my heart is completely at peace. If you have stayed with me through all of this, you are exactly the kind of person who understands why these boundaries matter so much. There are more stories just like my own waiting for you in the description below. Go ahead and listen to them, because you are the audience that truly needs to hear them.